in Downey Street. So I was always fascinated with Shandon because this huge clock as a young child and the bells chiming. And of course, at one stage when I was very young, I suppose it must have been about 9 or 10, there was a couple of us decided that we'd get a few bob together and we'd visit Shandon. So like that, health and safety didn't really exist at the time. So we were climbing up the steps and we were under the bells, and next thing the bells started ringing. And we were just young children, we were definitely beyond belief, like we just couldn't, it was like a scene from, I suppose, Quasimodo, really, Notre Dame, to us at the time, you know. It was a huge adventure, like to go up these steps, it was like going up into a castle. It was like a magical place, you know. We were going to see the bells and we were going to ring the bells, and then we got up to the viewing platform, and I think one of the people, one of the lads with me, he suddenly discovered he had a fear of heights, like, and he wanted to get down out of it, because like, I think I was up 120 feet on the viewing platform there. But we went down then and we rang the bells, and it was a huge experience for us.
I live here in the heart of Cork City, virtually the top of Patrick's Hill, and it's a very special place. And even since I was very young, I grew up in a different part of the city out in the western suburbs, but we used to come up here every single weekend, and I spent my youth playing in Bellsfield. And there's a great community spirit around the neighbourhood. Like a lot of the elderly people, Lord mercy them, have passed on now. There was a great feeling of neighbourliness, and there were great people came from the neighbourhood who were good at sport and in the commercial life of the city and that. And of course the panoramic view then, you're here in the centre of the city. You can just look out across the city at Shandon and the North Cathedral, and then we have Collins Barracks, which is quite close, and the great military tradition up there.
Well, no, when I first arrived, the British had moved out in 1922. They had burned the barracks. The barracks was in ruins. Now the whole lot of it was restored when I arrived here in 1959. Magnificent buildings, no doubt about it.
Opposite the entrance to Collins Barracks is the entrance into the campfield of the barrack, and this is a great amenity for the local people living around Audley Place, Richmond Hill, Sutton's Buildings and places, and you know the army kindly allowed people over the decades to go in there and walk their animals and use it as a local private park nearly, and within the grounds of Collins Barracks, of the campfield as it was known, there was a big green area that I used to do 3 rounds of it at one stage with a lovely big collie who is no longer with us now, but he was a bit, he was a wonderful dog, and he loved the chase. Like sometimes you know, if anybody was moving, he'd love to run after them a little bit. He wouldn't do anything to anybody, but it was a wonderful place to let him loose. Like, and the army kindly allowed all the locals, and there was nearly a confraternity of people that knew one another, all bringing their animals at different times up there. But the Pitch and Putt Club is still active, and then the officers' houses, but it was were within the campfield. And like all you had to do was to wave over to whoever was on duty at the front of the Collins Barracks, and they'd allow you in. Like so the army provided a great amenity for the community, and like even to this day now, my neighbours who live in Sutton's Buildings, Roach's Buildings, would go to mass at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, like, and into the little chapel there. There's sort of a tradition around the neighbourhood. I was in Cork when John F. Kennedy he flew in by helicopter to Collins Barracks and came down from there to the city centre. I was very small, I was just about, I think it was in my 7th year, and I have a memory of that, like my mother and my aunt brought myself and my sister down to see him. and we could see the cavalcade going over by the City Hall. And the excitement, like there was, people were swinging from the rooftops, really, like, he was very popular, like, and all Cork turned out.
My father, Dennis Lennon, he had an encyclopedic knowledge of Cork. He worked in Murphy's Brewery, and he had all, of course, the history of the brewery, that it was once a foundling hospital, and he was talking about there was a fantastic knocker on the door at one stage, and it was in the shape of, I think, a basket, and I think there might have been a child or something in it, But he often wondered like, what happened to that knocker, because or he must have seen it, and it eventually it vanished without trace, but he often asked about it.
It was late in the evening when my father came home from work and told me that his friend, Jack McCabe, the secretary of Murphy's Brewery, had informed him that there was a job going in the office at the brewery and that he had arranged for me to be interviewed for the position at 11 a.m. the following morning. The boardroom was dominated by a large, highly polished mahogany table, around which sat 4 gentlemen in expensive-looking tweed suits. I was directed to sit facing the chairman, Mr. Albert St. John Murphy, a large gentleman whose hearty complexion suggested a lot of time spent in the open air. He started proceedings with the statement, "Well, it seems that you are intent on joining our organisation." "Well done, Rexy," he said. "You can start on Monday in the bottling office. Come here at 10 o'clock and ask for me. Your pay will be £75 per annum, and you'll be allowed a 2-week holiday." I was dumbfounded and so breathless that the words of thanks failed to emerge. As he left me, he shouted over his shoulder, "And for God's sake, get your hair cut."
Theatre going on in Cork, and indeed the Palace became available again as a theatre. It had up to that time been a cinema, or for the few years prior to that, but that there was just a different energy in the theatre in Cork, and if people get out of the habit of something, it's difficult to wind it back up again. It's the exact same thing that happened with the Palace. The Palace would the everyman in Father Matthew Street would have had a wonderful season. You'd have bought season tickets, you'd always know what was coming up, and the houses were excellent and people were always very excited. But then in the move to McCurtain Street, they were effectively shut for 2 years. And I've heard this so many times that people just got out of the habit of going. People who were in college at the time who then moved on to jobs and got involved in different things, and it's been very difficult to recreate that whole energy and that whole focus. I don't know what the base is on. I mean, I know when we were doing the last production of Macbeth that everyone was going around talking about the Scottish play, and this nonsense that you can't say the word Macbeth. Well, I mean, that superstition I do know is comes from the times when in Shakespeare's own time, when a company was in trouble and didn't have any money in the coffers, they'd do Macbeth because it was always sure to bring in the crowds. So to be doing Macbeth meant you were in financial trouble.
But like one of the pictures was always a great treat, like like the admission costs would be very cheap in those days. It might be 10pence or something like that. Or decimalisation came in 1971, so it was probably in pounds, shillings and pence at the time.